What's up, everybody? Welcome to my review of the Loft Discs Hydrogen. This is the prototype Founders Edition Hydrogen. These are really interesting, unique discs that come all the way from Denmark. Big thank you to Loft Discs for sponsoring this video, sending me these discs to test and review. I appreciate their support very much, and it's really cool to work with a new company as they try to establish themselves in the market. This is their first release. The Kickstarter was wildly successful, and they really just crushed it in terms of getting the word out there about these discs, and it was really interesting to test them. And here comes my full review, showing you guys flight footage and all the other things that you come to expect here on the channel. So thanks again to Loft Discs. Thanks to all of you guys for watching and supporting the channel. I appreciate all of my subscribers and viewers very much. And also a huge shout out to the Disc Golf Nerd Patreon support team. For as little as $2 a month, you can really help out the channel and be considered a financial supporter of the channel. Have your name listed in the credits of all the videos. I really appreciate my Patreon supporters, and I definitely hope to continue the ball rolling here into 2021 and just keep doing what I'm doing. So let's get into the review of the Hydrogen. So we're going to take a look at this one since it has a little more wear on it. And this one, they basically performed identically. I'm going to wash this one up and bag it, put it aside. It's a pretty interesting kind of little piece of history since it is a prototype. These were some of the first ones produced, so a couple of slight differences that I want to reference on this video. They have a little bit more of a kind of satin feel, not quite as smooth and polished in terms of the molding. You can actually kind of see some like scuffing on the underside here. That's because these were produced right before the mold was polished for the last time, so they're just like slightly different. The production ones will have a little bit more of a polished look to them. Also, there's a little bit more flashing on the outside of this one than there will be on the production runs, but it wasn't so much that I really noticed, but that is something that they mentioned. Also, this stamp is not hot stamped on, it's actually just printed, but I love the way it looks, and I kind of hope they stick with this because I think it's a really clean look. I like the just simple matte black on the nice purple background. It's a handsome looking disc. It kind of stands out on the market with so many discs with such big, busy stamps and a lot of foils and stuff. I think this looks really clean, and I hope they kind of stick with this this overall vibe. So let's take a closer look at the design of this disc. It is quite small diameter by design. It's very slow by design. It has low glide also by design. Flat across the top, no dome, no kind of puddle top at all. Board flat, basically, across the flight plate for sure. It is a little bit of a deep feel for sure. It's got kind of a frisbee type shape to it. I know in the unboxing I said it was shallow, and I know that might have been confusing for people. What I was referring to is that it's quite shallow in terms of these kind of frisbee type discs. I will show you another similar disc in just a minute here, but compared to other discs with kind of a more old school frisbee type design to it, it does have a little bit more of a shallow feel in the hand, and I think it makes a big difference in terms of the comfort in the hand for this disc. So I think that's a benefit for sure. Taking a look at the edge here, it's quite blunt for sure. There's very little speed to this thing. It's not really like much mass or much of a beveled edge on this disc whatsoever, compared to other types of putters. You know, it just really doesn't. You know, this is a West Side Crown, just for a real quick comparison. You know, it's a vastly different design in terms of that. So first of all, sometimes I like to show a disc next to the kind of disc closest to it in my bag. Now, I'm not saying the Caltrop is all that close, but it's closest. It is also quite blunt on the edge there, but it definitely has more of a kind of protruding edge to it. It's relatively similar in depth, I would say. Let's put them up next to each other like that. Not a huge difference in terms of that, but the Caltrop also kind of feels a little bit deeper sometimes because of the design with the thumb track and stuff. But I love the Caltrop. It's definitely more of an overstable flyer in terms of having natural fade to it, but similar in terms of the amount of high-speed turn, which is essentially zero based on all the testing I've done of either of those discs. The most similar disc to the Loft Hydrogen by far is the Discraft Rattler. We're going to take a look at these, and you're going to see that they're definitely got some very similar vibes going on to them. They got that kind of frisbee shape. The diameter is not all that different. It's hard to show you guys that with my filming setup here, but yeah, the diameter is quite similar. Let's also, if I can stop hitting the camera, I'll put them on bottom to bottom like that. And there you can kind of see the difference in the depth of the Hydrogen. Definitely has a flatter, kind of shallower feel to it. The Raptor, the Rattler, slightly different than a Raptor. The Rattler rolls up over this edge here in a different way and really does just feel like a tiny, small diameter ultimate disc. This one ends up feeling a little bit more like a golf disc for sure, because it has that slightly shallower profile to it, and it also has more mass on this kind of underside here, so where you actually grab onto it is a little bit closer in between your thumb and your fingertips there. Quite interesting for sure. It definitely feels better in the hand than the Rattler, but they're altogether quite similar in terms of design. I will say I definitely enjoyed testing the Hydrogen more, and I found it to be a more interesting flyer for sure. So there it is next to a few other discs. So this plastic is the Alpha Solid plastic, and it is a more premium plastic, kind of ESP star type plastic, and I think partly because of the fact that it was produced before the mold was finally polished, so it has a little bit more of a satiny feel. The plastic's a little slippery for sure. We had a little bit of trouble with it. I had a little bit less trouble than James because I have bigger hands than him, so I was able to kind of get a better grip on this thing. For him, he had some troubles with the grip and the kind of feel of it a little bit. He was able to throw it fine, and I don't think it really had much issue in terms of like slipping out early or anything, but he kept saying that it felt like it wanted to slip out of his hand because it's just not super grippy. I would love to see these in the Beta Solid, which should be hitting the market at some point, and I'm hoping to test those as well, which will be more of a kind of putter plastic, more grippy, and I think that will be really nice. Also, I think I would probably like that better personally because it might break in a little bit and then allow me to throw this thing with my little slight hyzer that I like to, and maybe have just a tick of flip up would make it a little bit more versatile for me and my throwing style, I think. So all that being said, let's talk about the flight of this thing. So since this plastic is the Alpha Solid premium plastic, these were more designed for throwing and for driving, so that's pretty much what we tested them for. I did do some putting testing, and honestly that's probably what I like the disc best for. It was really, really easy to connect with inside the circle. So once I get a chance to try out the Beta Solids in a more putter type plastic, I will be doing a full separate video with those, showing how they fly for putting and for approaching and throwing, and give you my impressions on how they compare to the Alpha Solids and all that kind of stuff, so stay tuned for that. So, definitely an interesting disc to test, for sure. It seemed to react a little bit better to James's arm speed than it did to me. I didn't really get much distance out of this thing at all. It is very slow. It definitely is low glide. I also tend to throw pretty low shots whenever I can. My kind of natural release is kind of slight hyzer and relatively low. That did not work out in terms of getting much distance out of this disc. It would fly relatively straight all the way and then finish and just kind of land. What's really interesting about this disc is when you put it on anhyzer, it holds it straight down to the ground, but when you throw it flat, it doesn't move right at all. There's a couple of times where some of my shots look like they kind of rolled over right a little bit and then kind of settled back out, but I think those had some off-axis torque, or I was throwing them a little bit harder than I was throwing other shots in the field there, so I'm not exactly sure what that was about, but for the most part, it seemed like maybe it flipped up just a tiny bit in order to fly pretty straight, even on slight hyzer release, but you'll see it kind of finish to the left. Anytime it's finishing with any type of fade, that was because we put it on that angle. Like, there's no way to throw this thing and get it to like flip up and roll over and then hook up. Like, none of that happens. It's an extremely neutral, straight flying disc. We didn't have a lot of wind to test it with, but at least one of the shots that James throws, you're going to see it kind of air bounce up and down a little bit. That is because it was thrown into a headwind. It didn't veer off the line at all. So I'd be really interested to do a full kind of putting session with this thing out there on a somewhat windier day. Not something we had the opportunity for this particular review. Hopefully, if I get a chance to check out some Beta Solids, I'll be able to make that happen in that. But definitely a very slow disc, definitely inherently extremely straight flyer that really doesn't want to fade, and you have to really force it to get it to fly hyzer. But again, put on anhyzer, slight anhyzer, it takes that angle and just flies with it all the way to the ground. I think Probably a little bit better suited to players that are really comfortable throwing on the angles and don't really try to play for as much flip up as I do. I've always been more comfortable throwing on that slight hyzer and letting the disc kind of flip up, and you'll see that kind of happen with this disc, but not really. And it's definitely never going to kind of flip up and roll over naturally. Probably one of the most true flying, truly stable discs that I've ever tested. Now, the word stable is a little bit tricky because a lot of people say if a disc is very stable, they mean overstable, and it gets a little bit confusing in there. But if you're going to kind of boil it down to what a stable disc really should be, it should be something that doesn't have its own inherent flight characteristics, and it really just stays on the line that you put it on until it runs out of speed. This disc definitely has that attribute to it where it's really truly neutral, to the point where it has almost no inherent characteristics to it other than it being slow and having relatively low glide. It doesn't flip, it doesn't turn, it doesn't fade. It really just holds that angle all the way. So a very interesting disc to test for sure. Not something I would probably use much off the tee just based on the very limited range it has. It would definitely be more of an approach disc for me. But again, I think I liked it best for putting. In a market that's already kind of oversaturated with so many different molds, it is very cool to see something hit the market that is quite different than just about anything else you're going to run into. That is my review on the Loft Discs Hydrogen. Big thank you to Loft Discs once again for sending me these to test and review and for working with me. It's been really cool to correspond with them as much as I have over the last few months and talk about the progress and how everything's been going, and be a part of them trying to break into the market. It's been definitely been an interesting experience all around. Thank you so much for watching. Big shout out to all of my fans, viewers, supporters. I appreciate you all. And once again, huge shout out to the Disc Golf Nerd Patreon support team. I will talk to you all very soon. Cheers. Thank you so much for watching, and big thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. If you would like to see your name listed in the credits of all of my videos, go to patreon.com/discgolfnerd.